So I got to LA and I realized that everybody was way better than I was. And I had to get better really quick. But I could visualize in my mind what I needed to do to be better. And I was too chubby. And I wasn't fat, but I was too chubby for LA. So I went from 153 pounds to 135 pounds. But that was mostly because I was starving. I didn't have any money. I was really broke. I'd drive back to Oceanside for care packs for my mom and dad. And I got kicked out of that house in LA after 8 months. And it was like the best break that ever happened to me because I had met Rick Parada, one of the owners of Baby O Recording Studios, and my friend David O from the Plimsolls was a buddy of mine, and he worked there too. And they let me run their rehearsal studio they owned, and in turn, they let me sleep on the couch at the studio at night because I had nowhere to live. And I didn't want to go home to San Diego. I couldn't go home. I needed to stay there and do it. And it was the worst summer of my life because I had spent all my summers before that surfing and you know, being with girls and my best buddies, Alan Carrasco and Dale, and you know, I had my band the year before in the summers and where we would play, that's where it was happening. And this was a summer where I was a nobody, I was starving, I was in hot LA in August, which was disgusting, full of smog. The whole thing sucked, but I just didn't matter, I had to do it. And while sleeping when I was homeless, I met George Clinton. It's a little bit of a lucky break, a big lucky break. George liked me, I played on his album R&B Skeletons in the Closet. I met Bootsy Collins through that. Bootsy loved me. Bootsy thought I looked at me and saw himself as a kid in me, and he took me under his wing. Well, there's two things that went on. Carmine's trickery is what got me the gig. Because Carmine sat with the acoustic guitar with me in the back room secretly and then made me go home for a couple hours and buy me a little more time to work on the acoustic for a couple of things and come back. But I still wasn't playing the song right, but I was getting the vibe right. And it was enough to get me past the audition because Rod wasn't listening with a microscope at that point because the band was still coming together. I mean, Jeff Golub wasn't playing all the parts. Right? Matter of fact, Jeff Golub taught me how to play the intro to You're in My Heart. I think it's boom blam blam boom blam blam boom blam boom blam blam boom blam boom blam 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 blam. We taught it to me wrong. So I never learned it right. And so, you know, when I was playing the LA Forum and Jimmy Cregan saw me play it, Jimmy Cregan wanted to vomit because it was his guitar part. And he was already pissed because Jimmy Cregan really should have been on that stage, not me, some young and inexperienced kid. It was Jimmy's band for all those years, and Jimmy got let go. And so not only did he get let go when he was still, you know, feeling he was in his young prime, he had to watch me up there clamming up his parts. So it's really, you know, I can understand him being upset, but he was nice enough to write it on a napkin, the right voicings, which Rod gave me on the bus. Hey, he goes, hey, Jimmy says you're playing the intro all fucked up. Here, he wrote it down for it, and he just leaves and walks off. And I look, and it was one note that was off, but it was one note that made all the difference. So even Jeff Golub, the great Jeff Golub, was playing things wrong, and he even taught me how to play the thing wrong. So to get past the audition, I was okay. But later on, once the band was getting better and better, that's when I had to get better and better too. And it wasn't easy to do. And playing acoustic guitar, I almost got fired in Miami because it was the third show of the tour, and Maggie May was like, you know, but I was like, I was all fired up. You know, there's 65,000 people there, and the crowd screaming, and I start playing it. And literally, I was playing it like Pete Townsend or something. And man, Rod, after that night, he was already mad at me because I had stopped during the show on First Cut is the Deepest on that intro when I saw myself on the Diamond Vision screen. He thought I was waving at a girl, and I wasn't. I just froze. And then when I did that, he had just about had enough. And I was almost fired after that. I almost didn't make it to the Pensacola gig, the fourth gig. And it's because I had no sensitivity whatsoever with an acoustic guitar. I was deep down kind of a punk rock kid more. You know, we grew up listening to Joe Jackson, you know, and Elvis Costello and these things, and the Police and even hard rock, you know what I mean, listening to rock and roll and Zeppelin. And I never learned any of the Zeppelin acoustic songs. I only learned, like, you know, the rock songs. I was too immature to even like acoustic guitar, to tell you the truth, when I was young. I appreciate it now, but I was like, I hate acoustic guitar. When I was a kid, I wanted rock, I wanted Marshall amps, you know, so yeah, I really sucked on the acoustic guitar. But by the end of the Rod Stewart tour, I must admit I was pretty fucking good. Yeah. I could hold my own then with not anybody, but I definitely was like a different musician. In the band, it was pretty much, when I joined the band, it was a love-hate thing. It's like, I loved them, and they fucking hated me. You know, and it's true. I mean, I had Carmine Rojas's posters on the wall at my mom's house in my bedroom. I mean, I'm a fan. Jeff Golub was in all those Billy Squier videos with his blonde afro. I mean, I knew Tony Brock was in the Babies. This kid's first gig, the gig that made us famous in Carlsbad, Joe James's party, we opened up with Head First by the Babies, or maybe it was our second song, right? It was one of our staples. And now I'm in a band with a guy from the Babies. You know, I mean, I was a fan. And, but I was also cocky, and I was full of my own bravado, but I think that was part of what kept me in the mix, because I really believed that it wasn't fake, like I'm really insecure, so I act all. I really believed it. I really bought into my own bullshit. And I couldn't hear those guys telling me I wasn't good enough. Because believe me, they did, and people did. But I just couldn't hear it. I was like, Slim Jim Phantom is one of my best friends in the Stray Cats. And he goes, I was too stupid to know I wasn't good enough to be a big rock star. And I was sort of the same way. I was like, yeah, I can do this. Fuck yeah, why not? And they would hear it. And Robbie Robertson told me the same thing when he was doing it with Bob Dylan. He goes, I just couldn't hear it. It just didn't go in my ears. It went right past me. And it did with me. So those guys gave me a lot of shit, and they teased me a lot, but I didn't notice most of it. And they were resentful that all of them were real journeymen. I mean, countless David Bowie stadium tours, Billy Squier arena tours. Chuck Kentis was with Julian Lennon and with Nona Hendrix, and with Bowie, and Tony Brock, endless tour. I saw Tony Brock. I remember Paul Martinez and all of us would go see the Babies opening for Journey when we were young. You know what I mean? It's like these guys had all been around. I'd never done anything other than my band, This Kids, and quite frankly, they were pissed off. They didn't feel I worked to be there, and they were right. I didn't earn that position. I didn't pay my dues. They were right. And I said, fuck you, I don't care. I'm here, and this is what I'm doing. And in the end, we grew to love each other. And I grew to be humbler, and they grew to understand that I wasn't such an asshole, I guess, right? You know what I mean? It was like, because I loved those guys. I worshipped them. And I took all their shit they could dish out, because I knew that they were great, and I knew I had something I needed to learn from them. But what they did teach me about musicianship, the band did, was they taught me really a lot. They taught me really how to be a pro, because they were so good. And in a band like that, they don't sit down and go like, okay, you don't do that. You got to just listen, and you figure it out. And I stole tons and tons of things from Jeff Golub, and Jeff and Carmine were like, they were my foundations of, I was like the little kid brother, and they didn't want to have to deal with me, but they loved dealing with me. And I got all my vibrato. The next year I went in solo, and I was in Guitar World magazine in the Reader's third best new guitar player in the world, or something like that. And I was #1 best new guitar player in the world in the Reader's poll in Japan. And they talk about my vibrato. Well, I pretty much stole my vibrato exactly from Jeff Golub. And so I learned a lot, as far as musicianship goes. All those girls that I thought were there for me, many of them were just bananas over Rod Stewart, and I was in easy access for them to try to get closer to Rod. But I didn't care. They were running around my room naked. That's all that mattered to me, and it was really fun. And I would take pictures to show my friends back home. And I know it sounds disgusting maybe now to some people, but when you're a young guy and these people are doing these things and you don't know why, it's more of a puzzle. It wasn't about sex at all. It was more like, why is this happening? And then you'd call your friends. You won't believe it. There's 8 naked girls in my room right now. And they go, you liar. I go, okay, hold on. I take the pictures. Because otherwise no one would believe you. So I wasn't taking pervert pictures at all. Right. I know in the book it might sound like that. They weren't pervert pictures. They were like, guys, you won't believe this pictures. When I come back home to Carlsbad and Oceanside, look at this. And they're like, and they would say to me, well, why'd they do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. So that was really the things I learned about on the road. Luckily I I wasn't the fall in love kind of guy, so I never got hurt by any girls thinking they loved me, and when really they just wanted to meet Rod, or those things didn't matter to me. What I did was I had a real sort of a rock star energy about me that worked, so I could cheat it with that when I didn't play the parts right. And the real players would say to me, he plays with too much distortion. You know, like, because the classic guys were always like, oh, clean, hear the one note, wee, and I always been like, fuck that one note. It's like, you're an old man. I like Eddie Van Halen, you know what I mean? I like a lot of notes. And so I was a bit of a rebel with that. So the real players could tell that I wasn't so good, I think, but the fans seemed to really like it, and the energy in the band really worked. I had a thing, and I found out years later that Rod wanted me in the band because he was looking for a Steve Stevens. That's why he had Andy Taylor produce the album. Andy Taylor was big with the wang bar, all the crazy stuff, and what happened was he got Eddie Martinez, who was great with that shit. He played with Blondie, he played with all the Run DMC records, played all that Robert Palmer, Addicted to Love, and all that stuff. And he was good with that funk and that stuff. And he had Bernard Edwards produce the album from Chic, and he was doing this funk rock thing, which was really my bread and butter. And he wanted someone who could play like Steve Stevens, and I found out years and years and years later that he actually asked Jeff Golub, Jeff, can you play like this? And Jeff said, I'm not your guy. It's because Jeff wouldn't play like that. Jeff was already so, he was that guy that was beyond, but I was a Steve Stevens clone from Billy Idol. As a matter of fact, I got a call when Steve Stevens quit Billy Idol to be his guitar player before Rod Stewart, and I told Michael Goldstone at MCA, no way, because I knew that if I already cloned him so much and I kind of looked like him, and I knew that if I got that gig, I would forever be a Steve Stevens clone. And Steve and I talk about it now, because we've been friends for a long time. But Rod wanted some of that. So I brought all that, the modern thing. So Rod wanted to get out of being just the classic 70s guy. He wanted to get into some new shit. So I brought that. So Rod was good with that. And then Jeff Golub, he knew how to play all that beautiful slide. Like he could play Gasoline Alley, and he could play all those beautiful, tasteful things that I definitely couldn't play. It's funny because some of the guys are like, oh, Stevie turned around the tour. I saw some of the guys in the Rod band. They go, you're a little exaggerating. I go, I didn't say I turned the tour. And I go, but you guys had no idea. The guys in the band had no idea what was going on. And a matter of fact, a couple of months ago, I was hanging out with Rod and with Jimmy Roberts in New York. And Jimmy told me when he read that, he asked Rod, did this really happen? And Rod said, it could have. So Rod doesn't remember it, but we were hammered. But he says, he didn't say, no, it didn't happen. He says, it could have. And it did, because I remember it perfect. And I wrote about it. Because I had a diary, right? And it was a big night. And it wasn't like we talked like, let's sit down and talk like athletes. But what it was the athlete in Rod Stewart, the team sport, one for all for one, the boys, soccer mentality of it takes a team. It's not just about one person. We have that same mentality. He related to this. And I was pretty much for sure getting fired. And something else I just found out. I was in Austin, Texas, where I live now. And I was getting all my catalog. All my songs are coming out on Spotify. And there was a guy in Austin who my friend in Germany told me to meet, who was a guitar player. And he's played with a lot of people. And I went to his house because he was taking all my albums and digitizing them for the Spotify. And he said to me, I saw you play in Austin, Texas. Now, this is right before Dallas or around Dallas, okay? Me and Dave Grissom, who's another kind of a famous Austin guitar player. And I remember meeting Dave Grissom at the gig. We were there and we were invited by Carmine because one of the guitar players was going to be leaving the tour and one of us was going to take the gig. And he goes, I don't know if it was you or Jeff Golub. And I looked at him and I go, are you fucking kidding me? I go, it was me. And I didn't even know it. So they already had guitar players coming out in Austin to replace me with. And luckily it didn't happen. Because he said to me, Lance is the guy's name. Lance said to me, him and Grissom were going, man, this is pretty cool. He goes, well, I hope you get the gig. And he goes, and Dave Grissom said, no, I hope you get it instead. I mean, I wish you both luck. Fuck both those guys. That was my gig. Yeah, and and I'm cool with them now, of course. It's like I didn't even know. So there was already guitar players there ready to take my place. I was about that close to being out. And in the God's honest truth, my big deal was don't fire me before San Diego, because all I really cared about was coming home to San Diego and playing in front of my friends and my mom and my dad. And if they fired me after that, I could deal with it. But if they fired me before everyone came to see me in San Diego, it would have been a death blow. Mm-hmm. So Rod and I had this talk, and I didn't realize how close to being fired I was, but I had a feeling I was going to be fired. Where I said, because it wasn't just me, it was the band. The band wasn't playing great. Everybody was in their own world. And we just weren't playing together. And maybe as much as they won't admit it, maybe stupid little old me help glue those big icons together. Carmine and Jeff, they're like big, they're big, they're like gods, right? And every god's got his space there. And I somehow, maybe I help get those big guys to come like that, because you don't tell him how to do that. You don't tell him how to do that. He's telling you how to do that. And goddamn it, he's got the credits to prove it. So somehow I said to Rod, please give us a chance. I go, I will take this band would die for you. And I don't know if they would or not. Most likely they wouldn't, because Jeff Golliver, those guys would say, fuck you, Rod. I quit, because they could take another gig tomorrow with anybody else. But I really felt like we were so close to coming together. And somehow after that moment, it was Rod. See, Rod wasn't being a great leader, and he probably won't like hearing me say that, because Rod was more like, oh, these guys aren't working. Rod was insecure. He had always had the same band of his best friends, Jimmy and Robin and the guys. And so you don't blame him. He was almost still a little distant with us. He hadn't really embraced us yet. He was more like, yeah, you guys work for me. I want, and he had one foot in, one foot out, whether he's going to admit it or not. And after that talk, he showed up at sound check in Dallas. We ended up firing the sound man after a while. He sat out to the board and listened to everyone's sounds. He started becoming way more proactive on everything that was going on, from the sounds, the lights, to what we were playing. And I don't know if he remembers that or not, but he did, and he became a real leader. Yeah, it felt like he bought in. He was in, and we responded, and from that moment on, we became great.